Something you might hear people say is that happiness is a choice. But if that were true, would anyone be unhappy? Because to say that happiness is a choice implies that it's also a choice to be unhappy. And I think a lot of unhappy people would take offense to that. If it was really as simple as just making a choice, wouldn't they have chosen to be happy? But that's not how emotions work. You can't just flip a switch and instantly change the way you feel. You can't just cheer up when you feel sad. You can't wake up in the morning and just decide not to feel anxious or depressed that day. But this also doesn't mean we're powerless. And it doesn't mean that happiness is out of reach. Emotional states are essentially outcomes. And you can't just pick and choose an outcome. But you can change the conditions that lead to it. So while you can't directly choose to be happy at any given moment, what you can do is make choices that tend to result in being happy. You can choose how you look at life, how you interpret and respond to situations as they arise. You can choose where to focus your attention and what to appreciate. And these kinds of choices play a powerful role in how we feel. For instance, many of us are so focused on what seems to be missing in life that we overlook what's right there in front of us. And there's so many things that we take for granted, so many things that we fail to appreciate. But when we shift our attention, when we take notice of what we already have, and when we get into the practice of appreciation, we begin to feel more grateful, more grounded, and a little bit happier. And I'm not telling you to deny actual problems, nor am I suggesting that you should never do anything to change or improve your life. If there's something you can do to make your life better, then do it. All I'm saying is don't overlook what you already have. And sometimes what we have is the opportunity to improve our lives. And that's something to be grateful for, just to have that opportunity. But sometimes we can be so focused on the problem that we're blind to the solution. And the solution could be right there in front of us. And we fail to see it because our perspective is skewed toward problems rather than possibilities. So shifting our focus is a choice that we can make. And that's not to say that it's always an easy choice, but we can practice. And the more we practice, the more natural it becomes. And the more that we shift into that mindset, the more our emotional state tends to shift toward happiness. So something we can practice whenever we're feeling unhappy is we can ask ourselves, what might I be taking for granted in this moment? What am I failing to appreciate? What is one thing I have in my life that I can be grateful for? Now, with that being said, it's also important to understand that we don't need to feel happy all the time. It's very natural to feel unhappy. And there are times when feeling unhappy is the most appropriate way to feel, given the situation. If someone mistreats you, if something is taken from you, if you lose your job, or if you lose someone you love, or if you're just going through a really stressful situation, it's quite natural to feel unhappy in those moments. The real problem is when we feel unhappy all the time, even when things are going well for us. You see, a great deal of our unhappiness doesn't even come as a result of our current circumstances. It's often something we carry from our past in the form of regrets, resentments, and unhealed wounds, or attachments to things long gone. We can find ourselves in a pleasant situation and still feel miserable because emotionally we're someplace else. Sometimes we can be surrounded by so much beauty and be blind to it because we're living in our heads, dwelling on the past instead of living in the present moment. So here we have another choice, the choice to hold on or let go. And again, it's not an easy choice, but it's a choice that strongly affects the way you feel. And oftentimes, understanding our unhappiness is what helps us to let go. For example, many people will say that they feel unhappy because they don't have a romantic partner. But if you look more deeply, you'll find that the real cause of the unhappiness is the belief that a partner will make you happy. And this belief is easy to disprove. Just look around. There's so many people in relationships who are deeply unhappy. And it's not just relationships. Most people's unhappiness is due, at least in part, to the belief that happiness can only come as the result of something outside of yourself. Whether that's having more money or accomplishing some goal, changing your circumstances, or through some pleasurable experience. And when we make our happiness dependent on external circumstances, this actually increases the likelihood of us being unhappy. Because first of all, things don't always work out the way we want them to. But secondly, even when we get what we want, it doesn't always satisfy us. Sometimes we get the very thing we think will make us happy, only to discover that it doesn't. And even when it does seem to make us happy at first, that happiness tends to fade with time, even while the object remains. So it's important that we examine our beliefs about happiness, because it's possible that those beliefs are the very reason we're unhappy. And when we begin to see how they make us unhappy, we can begin to let them go. Now, another thing that can cause a great deal of unhappiness is when we focus all of our energy and attention on the things we can't control. Whether that's things in our personal lives or things going on in the world outside. When we dwell on these things, it makes us feel helpless and hopeless. It drains our energy and motivation. But most of all, it distracts us from the areas in our lives where we do have an actual influence. And when we overlook those areas, there's a lot we don't get done. And that stagnation feeds into our feelings of hopelessness. Whereas if we focus on those things, on the things we can do, rather than the things we can't, we begin to feel more empowered, more motivated, maybe even excited at the possibility of changing something in a positive direction. So here's where we have another choice: to shift our focus, to redirect our attention toward the things within our power. And this can include simple things, like the kind of information we choose to consume. Because a lot of the news, for example, tends to be regarding things that are beyond our control. Or we might be consuming a lot of information that is explicitly designed to evoke fear and outrage, because that's what gets clicks. And so we can choose instead to consume the kind of information that uplifts and inspires, or that deepens our understanding, or that shows us what is possible. and offers us ways to bring about positive changes in our lives and in the world around us. And another thing we can change is the kind of company we keep, the people we associate with. Whether we're talking about our immediate circle of friends or the people that we connect with online. Because the people we surround ourselves with can have a great deal of influence on what we think and how we feel. Some people can drag us down with their constant negativity, criticism, conflict, or drama, while others can lift us up and encourage us, reminding us that we matter. And they might also inspire us by the ways in which they live, in how they deal with difficulties, and how they rise above the mess. A person's attitude can be contagious, whether it's positive or negative. And when we surround ourselves with people who are genuinely positive, it influences our outlook on life. It influences how you feel about yourself and what seems possible. And if, for some reason, you can't find good company, then it's simply better to be alone. Now, there's just one other thing I want to mention, and this goes back to something that we already touched upon. It's how a great deal of our unhappiness can come from ruminating over the past or worrying about the future. And this fits well into the category of things we can't control. But what we can do is choose to direct our attention to the present moment. When we give our full attention to whatever we're doing in the present moment, whether it's eating or walking, working or relaxing, ordinary moments become much more meaningful. We can come to appreciate and enjoy the simple things in life simply by being more present. So while we can't simply choose to be happy at any given moment, we can make choices in life that create the conditions for happiness to arise more naturally. Every day from the moment we wake up, we can choose where to place our attention. We can choose to be more present and to appreciate what we have. We can turn our attention to what is fortunate in our lives, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. We can take a moment to just appreciate having food to eat, water to drink, air to breathe, and a bed to sleep in. We can start with these basic things that most of us take for granted, and then ask ourselves, what else can I appreciate? What else have I been taking for granted? And if we make these kinds of choices, if we shift our attention in this way, it will shift the way we feel. Maybe not immediately, but over time, we'll find ourselves much happier than before. If this video resonated with you and you want to explore a little deeper, check out one of these videos next. And if you find value in this content, be sure to like, share, and subscribe.